All right, dog. It is the last number 4 in our Lactate Myth series, though I thought about adding a 5th one because some people think lactate is what causes fatigue. That is, to the very best knowledge, it's so far from the truth. So if you're interested in that one, it's something I can go into, but it's usually not one I do with my students. These were the 4 that I did, but I always thought about adding that one in, but I never did. But if you're interested, let me know. Okay, so it is the cause of the increase that we see in acidity or decreased pH, right? Because we know, right? It's that kind of inverse logarithm of the kind of proton concentration or whatever, right? So the more acidic something is, the lower the pH will be, right? Like less than 7. Anyway, so, or decreased pH seen in the skeletal muscle during exercise. So these are the things. These were the kind of equations I'd always show to the students. This is kind of the way I presented it. So I'm going to make an argument first, because this is the way I used to tell it. Is I used to believe, probably until about 9 years ago, when I read this exercise biochemistry book, actually. I didn't, all the other ones I knew, but I didn't believe it was the cause. I believed it was part of the cause, because I knew that you're already going to have protons that are going to be, right, like I knew with ATP and like glucose. But what I wasn't really aware of is that, I guess, how you truly make lactate at a chemical level. So that's what we'll go into. So first, right, what I did know, right? So I used to believe that it was part of the cause of the increase in acidity. Now I don't believe that at all, and I believe that if anything, you could make the argument that it actually decreases acidity. So I know it sounds heresy, I know, but it's very counterintuitive. So we call it lactic acid, right? And you're like, oh, it's an acid, it's a proton donor, and you're like, well, this is fine, it could be, but this is lactate. Remember, it's not lactic acid. So anyway, so first, glucose, right? So as we're looking at glucose. Glucose and 2 NAD+, right? So kind of what we want to think about is, so we have, and we've looked at this process, right? We've got glucose, we've got 2 NAD+, right, that we had before, just like we saw kind of in that diagram, right? Now, what this symbol is going to mean is that this chemical reaction can go this way and it can go that way. It depends on the environment, like which side is favored, let's say for now, right? So in this process, right, as glucose, we're going to look at it kind of going this way, because when we exercise, a lot of the time, though not necessarily, right, the opposite is obviously what happens in the liver, but in the skeletal muscle, it's mostly going to be going this way. We're going to take glucose, we're going to take 2 NAD+, we're going to make 2 pyruvates, we're going to make 2 NADHs, but we're also, as a byproduct, in the process of doing that, we're going to release 4 protons into our milieu, into our environment, right? Like, we're going to release that. So now what you want to think about is, what really is acidity, right? Now, acidity is the measure of the amount of free protons in an environment. So every time the process of glycolysis, of going from a glucose to 2 pyruvates, is going to acidify your environment. Just that alone. There is no lactate involved in that process. There's no lactate in that step. It's just that, right? So, just that, right? Those. So for sure, we can, at least to the best of our knowledge, we now know that lactic acid is definitely not the sole contributor, because just the process of breaking down glucose is certainly going to make our environment more acidic. Right? Okay, so let's kind of keep going. Now, one of the things we haven't talked about a lot is what ATP is. I've talked about it a little, right? ATP is kind of our energy currency. It's what we use to do almost everything in our body, right? To kind of propel ourselves, certainly a lot. We use a lot of ATP. So in the skeletal muscle, when you're creating a lot of ATP. Now, the other thing you're doing is, when you're moving, you're breaking down, right? You're hydrolyzing, right? Via the process of hydrolysis, you're going to use water, right, to break down ATP. That's the way we're going to do this. And we'll talk a lot about this later. I don't want to get too far into it. But once again, here's a process that's reversible. It can go this way, it can go this way. in your skeletal muscle, right, during exercise, a lot of it is going to be going this way. Now, granted, we're going to be creating a lot of, taking a lot of ADPs and making ATPs, but we're really going to be focusing more on the breakdown of ATPs a lot right now. Now, granted, when we get into some of the other processes and we look at ATP-PCR system and the aerobic system and glycolytic system and stuff like that, we're going to talk about how do we actually make it. But for now, we're just focusing on, all right, we need to break down ATP, so we're kind of moving in this direction. So every time you break down ATP, which you're going to favor breaking down ATP rather than building ATP when you're going to be moving, right? Every time you do that. So more of it's going to be headed this direction. You're going to be making a proton every time you do it. Now, when you reverse it, it does. It goes back, you're going to take some up. But remember, right, both of these are going to happen. They're reversible. But during exercise in the muscles, we're going to favor this direction. So we're going to be favoring making that. We're going to be favoring making that. All right. So at this point, breaking down ATP or breaking down glucose, which is what we're going to do anytime we move, anytime we exercise, those things are certainly going to make our environment more acidic. They're going to create more protons, which by definition is going to make our environment more acidic, right? It's going to drop our pH. Where's lactate come in all this? So here's your pyruvate, right? Here are pyruvates. Remember, you're going to take pyruvate and then NADH and an H+, right? So you're going to take one of these and one of these and one of these. And what you're going to be able to do is, remember, you're going to make that into lactate. And when you do, remember, you free up this NAD+ so it can go back to glycolysis. But that's not all you do. The other thing that you do is you rid your environment of what? You rid your environment of a free proton, right? This, right, it's reversible, right? It's reversible. But what you're going to favor during exercise is in this direction. So my contention would be, right, the making of lactate actually decreases the acidity of the environment, right? Not only is it not the cause of the increase in acidity, my contention would be you could make the argument that in the short term, right, really what it does is help you decrease the acidity of the overall environment. I mean, it's removing a proton. By definition, you could make that contention, that posit. So, yeah. So that's the last of the myths, right? I hope it makes sense. These are easy equations to find. I'm not making them up. These are super basic chemistry equations, right? They're readily available. You'll probably find them with their delta G and everything, right? Readily available. So, and I encourage you to look all this up, but this is my reason why it's not the cause of it. So I hope this has been informative for you. I hope you've gotten something out of it. I hope you're better informed, and you'll be, right, someone wants on their team when you're going to play bar trivia, right? That's always a positive thing. But the best thing is you'll be better informed if you're going to go out there and you're going to, test your body and you're going to go out there and make yourself stronger and get yourself in better shape and take care of yourself. Or you want to inform those around you of how to do that stuff, right? Or just you want to be better informed. So you can help those and yourself and any of those around you. So, I think that's it. That's all I got on that. I'm going to shut it down. May your day be auspicious. Wale.